I unmuted you, John.
Oh, okay.
I just didn't. I was like, is Heidi on the call? And I was like, oh no, I'll mute you. So.
Yeah, I've been trying to talk and nobody's hearing me.
Oh, sorry.
So okay, good to know. Manuel is going to be a little late. He's got a conflict till 9:30.
Good morning, Heidi. You are muted.
Yeah,
also, do you actually want to be a presenter or did you accidentally click the button? Okay, I was like, oh, that always happens.
Just clicking madly to get.
That's what I did at the Bing Summit. I kept accidentally clicking to like, I want to share my screen. I'm like, I do not want to share my screen. I did not mean to click that. Like, I hope they don't get that.
I'm sure everyone wants to know what's on your computer and just spread it through the whole world.
Thought is exciting too. Yeah.
we are one short of a quorum, and Manuel won't be on till 9:30.
What are we missing? Uncall somebody.
Yeah. I'll
Eric?
call Eric and I'll try Ann.
Okay. I just sent a text to Eric. Did I catch him? Okay, thanks, because we need you for quorum. Okay, bye. All right, Eric's coming on.
I got Ann's voicemail, so text her.
Well, it's the day before an election, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Is there an election? Really?
Well, she's up, so for her, it's really busy.
Yeah. I mean, that's all the news I get.
Oh, I know. Emails are full.
Hopefully it'll be over soon.
I wish I felt confident it was going to be.
Well, okay. I don't have a cell phone for Ann. All I have is her landline.
Well, if we get Eric, are we okay? I think.
He's here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So Eric's on. Okay.
Okay.
So we will begin with roll call, I suppose. So let's go in reverse with committee member Toyota.
Here.
Potashner.
Here.
Thanks. Sanborn.
Yeah.
In our random order. Davis is here. Mr. Medrano will not be available until 9:30. And Ann is trying to get in, I guess. So.
I'll work on that.
Yeah. Kate, what's next? I'm sorry, on the agenda. I guess today's meeting, we're going to work back through comments at some point. We do have a couple of new comments from our last meeting, and then there's a revised narrative that went up in Google Docs that we can look at. Kate has a copy of it that was in response to comments received at the commission, and so we can look at the revised narrative to hopefully move forward to the commission. The committee chairs received some guidance on formatting, and so we'll have to rework the revised narrative into the new format. Part of the effort, and then the other main item today is to try to work back through the various items that we've preliminarily discussed but have not reached a consensus of moving forward to the commission. We have a number of those as well. It looks like Committee Member Snyder is joining us. Or maybe joining us. Okay, so why don't we, Kate, do you have public comments?
I do. I have 4 public comments. These have been published. 2 of them were mislabeled as workshop comments. I'll work with IT to get those fixed, and I can send these to you all after. The 4 comments, 2 are from Howard Levinson and 2 are from Gail Bryce at XT Green. So from Howard Levinson about market development preliminary recs, RE preliminary recommendation 24, durable, reusable, refillable, repairable options. One concept that should be included is modulated fees. CowerCycle included this policy concept in its 2018 paper, Future of Electronic Waste Management in California. He provides a link. And I'm sorry, now that I'm doing this, I probably should have waited till that agenda. That's probably why I labeled this, but I just keep that in mind, sorry. Another email from Howard, same kind of topic about organics facility siting. The committee thus far is not addressing one of the key barriers, i.e. issues related to Clean Air Act. CowerCycle collaborated with other entities to publish an initial paper on this. See https://www.cowercycle.ca.gov/public notices/public-notices/details/2462. While this would require changes in federal law, the issue should at least be identified and perhaps discussed with the next White House pending results of the election. And then the 2 comments from Gail Bryce.
I'm sorry, before we move on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Those were 2 really important comments from somebody who's got a lot of knowledge about this work. And so I just thought, I really appreciate that Howard's weighing in. I know he's semi-retired, but I appreciate the knowing about the e-waste document and that modulated fees are recommended in there, because in market development, I don't know where this is going to go, if it falls in the recycling committee or our committee, but I do think that e-waste program needs an update. It's only covering CRTs. It needs to cover all electronics and be fully funded. So that's something, I don't know, would we take that up, or would we recommend that comment goes to the recycling committee?
Maybe that decision would be a commission decision, but if we feel there are market development aspects, we've taken on areas that we feel are important from a market development perspective as opposed to a straight recycling perspective, I guess, although they're all entangled. But,
well, what we can do is read that comment.
I downloaded a copy of the report, but I just learned about the comments this morning, so I haven't read the report. But I have a feeling that the use of the fees is a market development issue. Likely there's market development impact, so we could certainly take that out.
If it's okay with the rest of the committee, I'm thinking that we bring this comment up at the commission meeting Wednesday and ask where the group would like to have this comment go, which committee. Because it's kind of both market development and recycling. And it's also, sure. I don't think the e-waste program was listed as one of the highest ones on our attention list. So maybe that's for post January 1st for one of the committees. Is that okay? Do you want me to bring it up on Wednesday?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other comment he made about
I'll post the report and try to find the specific reference to modulated fees too. So have that ready.
Okay. And then organics, that's obviously an organics committee, I think. Referral, if that's okay. Does that make sense to you, Eric? And we can just say that at the commission meeting Wednesday? Okay.
And that report requires a public information request. So I submitted that request this morning. And when I get a copy, I'll send it.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll go. So 2 remaining comments are from Gail Bryce. One is around draft carpet recommendations. XT Green supports CARE submitting an upcoming report and comments for consideration regarding the California Carpet Stewardship Program. However, prior to the committee discussing and editing the final draft carpet recommendations, the committee should consider requesting a review from the California Carpet Stewardship Advisory Committee, whose members have been appointed by the Director of CowerCycle, Senate Committee on Rules, and the Speaker of the Assembly. The advisory committee members represent stakeholders in the carpet collection/sorting, processing community, manufacturers that use recycled content from carpet, the carpet mills, carpet retailers, local governments, the trade union representing flooring installers, and the environmental community. Thank you for your consideration. And another comment from Gail on construction and demolition waste. XT Green suggests that prior to making recommendation regarding construction and demolition C&D waste, the committee request a briefing regarding the current state and local guidelines, regulations, and ordinances regarding C&D waste. The current requirements often have unintended consequences that impact the amount of material recycled that results in large amounts of valuable resources going to landfills. For example, post-consumer carpet is often grouped together with higher weight, larger quantity C&D waste like concrete and wood. Due to this, larger amount of carpet and demolition waste can be disposed while the demo project still meets its percentage diversion rate by weight. This could be solved by establishing separate diversion rate requirements for post-consumer carpet and other lighter weight materials such as drywall and manufactured wood, especially if there is a shortage of recycling feedstock material like for post-consumer carpet. Thank you for your consideration. And that is all the comments that have come in, and those are published.
So remind the committee that we did request a presentation on CalGreen, the C&D program. We requested a CowerCycle presentation, and that unfortunately couldn't be done today, but I believe it'll be scheduled for our next meeting in 2 weeks. So, and I specifically asked I think the question that Gail's referring to about whether specific materials have targets or whether it's the bulk of the work. So when you're looking at requiring, for example, 50%, 75% recycling from a C&D job site, most of that material is going to be wood and concrete and by weight. So things like ceiling tiles, carpet, drywall, kind of tend to fall out of that the overall goal attainment. So I think that's something we definitely want to talk about in a couple of weeks. And as far as the carpet comments, yeah, I think once we have them written, we did reach out to CARE and had a brief discussion, but haven't been able to follow up with them. So I think once we have a comprehensive set, hopefully maybe at the end of today, then we can request CARE, and we can certainly send it to the Carpet Advisory Committee. And we're going to be hearing input on all the commission recommendations at any point. So. All right, so that's it on the items not on the agenda. We have meeting notes from our last meeting. So we can do this formally, or I can ask if anybody has any changes to the notes. And if not, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I just thought having the Carpet Advisory Committee and CARE at the same meeting, I think would be really interesting because they haven't agreed on how to run the program several times. And the advisory committees like us, they're made up of a broad stakeholder group. So it's very interesting to hear all the different sides. But I think we need to hear from both before we decide what our recommendations are for carpet. And even the bigger decision as to whether we want to include all flooring, because we've got that, vinyl wood-like flooring that's designed for disposal, basically. There's nothing we can do with it. So, and that's competing in the market with carpet. So I think we might want to have to first hear from both groups on carpet and then decide if we're going to address all flooring as well as carpet at a future meeting.
So was your suggestion that we try to hold a meeting with both the advisory committee and CARE, or two separate meetings?
I would like to be clear on what questions we have for both and email the questions to both, see the responses, and then decide to schedule a meeting with both of them present to answer our follow-up questions. We just don't have time to have everybody just come in and tell us whatever they want to tell us when we might only need a sliver of it because we might have a big picture part of it. So I prefer to have it in writing from both.
Okay.
On specific questions that we want to ask.
All right. Well, let's take that up on the recommendation section today and see if we can frame some questions for you. So I saw that Ann Schneider had logged on, and it looks like I haven't seen her. So anyway, on meeting notes, Robert's Rules of Order actually does not require formal adoption of meeting minutes or notes, and so I'm fine kind of accepting them by consensus in the absence of any modifications. So if anybody has any changes they'd like to put forward on the notes of our last meeting, we can do so now. If not, we can accept them, but if you're more comfortable having a motion, that's fine as well. But I'm fine just accepting them by consensus in the absence of any changes. Okay, let's do it and move forward. We should be, I believe, now on the narrative.
Okay, so I'll pull up the narrative document.
Yeah, I'd like to circle back to the narrative since the narrative involves recommendations that we formally made to the commission. The commission discussed them and asked for some changes.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Wow. You're getting a very weird view. Okay. Let me try to fix that. Just another Monday. Okay, let's try this again.
For the record, I keep trying to print these agendas and the meeting minutes, and every time I print them, they come up with like this giant font. I keep trying to shrink them, and I don't know if it's just me,
oh
but
my gosh.
Right off the page, I've wasted a ton of paper trying to.
Okay, we'll try. You can send out like a Word copy, maybe. That would be helpful.
Yeah. I keep shrinking it smaller and smaller, and it still does that.
Oh man, yeah, I don't know. I'll look into that. Okay, here you go, John. I think this is. Is this not the? So this doesn't have your second bullet. So this is not the.
Well.
Let me.
Yeah, I thought I had changed the date. I thought I had changed the date.
I do have it. Let me. I had downloaded this, so. Well, is it this? Here, I opened up the track changes. Is this? You changed the date. Okay, so this is.
Yeah, apparently yeah, you had the right one. That was the right one. I just.
Okay.
The narrative. I meant to update the narrative, the date and the heading.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Yeah, so this is easier to see with the track changes. So I went back and added moved that code reference, added a little bit more background. SB 1066 was a big market development bill in '97 and had those key findings that I thought made a good intro. The next paragraph is unchanged about being the interface between private investment and public incentives. And then the SB 1066 reference is carried forward to kind of introduce the four goals. So I think it flows a little better as an overall narrative with that. And then the first of the four goals in bold, unchanged. Next paragraph, I think unchanged. Yeah, so now we get down into the Permit Reform Act. And I think although we referenced the Permit Reform Act, there was comments at the commission about having more background. So I included really all of the paragraphs that were used at the BIN Summit as the handout explaining the process. These came from Cal EPA's report on the 1045 process, so it's language that I think has been vetted. It may be more than the commission was looking for. I think one comment was to do a paragraph kind of summarizing it. And I suppose in summary, it would say that the process involves a series of time or involves time when Cal EPA must take action to move permits forward. So there's a single point of contact. It's at the request of a developer. And then there has to be a permit agency designated within 30 days. Within 5 days after that, they must schedule a meeting to occur within 15 days. So, you go through this and there's a whole series of steps, but they're all specific steps required to be taken by Cal EPA in response to a request to move a project forward. Like I said, I could try to consolidate the language more, but I think I wanted to show it in detail to the committee at least, and then get your views about how to move this forward. Heidi Sanborn has her hand raised.
I just am nervous about going too far on this one until we have heard from Cal EPA why this hasn't been done already. I feel like this was in law a long time ago and it hasn't happened, and I don't know why. But I would very much like to hear directly from the agency that really would be the lead on this before we finalize any recommendations on the consolidated permitting process to send to them. I think we need to hear from them. I don't know if I'm the only one, but it seems to me it would be very helpful to know why this hasn't happened already. Because we might be missing something, some barrier that hasn't happened to be removed in order for them to proceed. I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one, but I'd like to invite Secretary Blumenfeld or somebody from the agency and somebody from GoBiz to explain why this hasn't happened already.
Sarah Toyota?
Yeah, I just would like to say I agree with that, because in a way, this is part of what we're going to be recommending, right? And so if it's been already on the books, then it does make sense to find out why before we just recommend it again, because if it didn't go anywhere the first time, then saying it again isn't going to help unless we have some background or understanding and can add that to say and remove the barrier to actually get it done.
Yeah, and I see Ann Schneider has her hand raised. So, yeah.
Hi, thank you. I'm on my old laptop, so I'm still trying to figure out how it used to all work. I agree with Commissioner Sanborn. Let's find out why it doesn't work. My guess is that over the years, staff changing, it isn't a priority. And also there probably isn't a single reporting format that shows how everybody's working together on this. And maybe it needs to be a standing agenda item on a Cal Recycle standing meeting on that. And then it happens. When you have to report on it, it happens.
There's no accountability. That's a really good point.
It's why I think, I can't remember if it was this committee where they're going to report out on where are the, what is the residual level from every curbside program, and start bringing that up to the elected officials, because we don't know. And if we don't know, we can't, we're not spending the public's money the right way. So the reporting mechanism to me is critical.
Okay. Yeah, so just by way of background, during preparation for the BIN Summit that was held last week, we did pose those questions, both over time to Cali PA, Cal Recycle, and the governor's office, and we never really got an answer. Has there been a project? Even has there been a project, let alone what precluded the process? So this has been on the books for 23 years, and or actually longer than that, 27 years. And it just seems to have fallen by the wayside. So, but we can renew that. But I'm not sure we're going to get an answer as to what's wrong with the process if no one's gone into the process or can recall anybody in the process. The other thing I wanted to point out is that our recommendation doesn't modify this aspect of the process. So what's on the books is on the books. We're saying it could work better if local government were involved. And, whether someone wants to undertake the process or not is really up to a project proponent. But if you scroll down a bit, and Kate, we're not recommending changing anything involving the state agencies. And just to be clear, so keep going down to the recommendations. Yeah, so it's to include cities and counties and local enforcement agencies in the process, along with the state agencies that are already called out. And then we do recommend adding GoBiz to the process. And I think it's maybe an interesting question whether GoBiz could perform a similar process, but I'm not sure they have the ability to pull in local air districts and regional water boards, which is specified in the statute. So the other, the language clarifying what the local agencies are, and then Kate, just scroll down to the next paragraph. And then why it's important, and I think this came out during the BIN Summit, that being able to share information was successful, was very helpful in the two paper mill examples in Utah and in Virginia, and also from discussion of organics facility permitting. Being able to share that information so that I think it was stated more than once, you bring a new project like a compost facility, an AD facility, a paper pulping facility to a local government that's never seen anything like that. And they go and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars of developer money to do CEQA compliance around the project that they really don't understand and know how to fit. And so the idea would be in the consolidated process, at least you're sharing information and knowledge between agencies who are involved across the permitting realm. And so this added language was in response to that. I'm not sure, Kate, if you scroll down, I'm not sure there were any other changes from the prior. And then emphasizing that the discretionary authority remains unchanged. We're only focused on the existing process with the stated completion dates and timetables. But the process does not guarantee permit issuance. Scroll down. Yeah. So that was it on the changes, and so we can certainly try to dive deeper into why the process. I'm not sure the question is really why the process isn't working, except no one's in the process. So to ask what's wrong with the process may not get us an answer. That would be my concern.
Well, maybe the question is, why aren't we doing it, period?
Yeah.
But there may not be if there's a process outlined, but we're not doing it. Is it because people aren't asking for the help? I mean, I would just like to know why we are at this point where it's been in the books on the law for this long and nobody's going through the process, especially if we're going to recommend that we do this.
Yeah, and I think number 4 was really the one way to test out the process, since there isn't any recent experience to undertake pilot projects. Maybe a compost project, and hopefully if we get a paper pulping project, use the process to try to streamline. Okay, so please note that Committee Member Medrano has joined us. Thank you, Manuel. Yeah, so the discussion is how we try to dig into the process itself and understand what's broken. So how do you want to proceed with that? Who should we? I guess I'm willing to reach out. GoBiz, we have a contact at GoBiz. They kind of have maybe a comprehensive view of this. Yeah, Committee Member Sandwell.
Thanks. I actually had a call on Friday with Kaina at GoBiz about a company that wants to come to California, and so I can reach out to Kaina and ask him and Scott Dosick, the new deputy director over there, because he's a friend of mine, and ask him if if we could talk to them about it. I could just send a quick email today and find out more specifically directly from them, and then we could report back to the committee, or invite them to present something if we think that that's going to be helpful to all of us. But I do think also we need to ask Cal EPA, and I know Secretary Blumenfeld is coming, but he won't be back to meet with us until December 16th. So we could also ask Zoe and the CalRecycle staff to reach out to Jared and ask if they could get us an official response as to what they understand as to why this isn't happening now.
Yeah, and we had, at the BIN Summit, we did have Undersecretary of Cal EPA. We could ask Serena about her research on the topic, because she knew we wanted to. She knew we wanted to talk about this, and it wasn't very explicit. So, Mr. Medrano.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was thinking about this over the weekend. Maybe number 3 could just become a really preliminary type of recommendation, and we could explore it much further. Is that what the conversation was going to? About recommendations we submit at the beginning of the year, and then for number 3, because we still need to do quite a bit of more exploration on it. Maybe it could remain as where the original language ends here, number 3, and then we could follow up with how state agencies need to apply this requirement, and perhaps even take on, like John was saying, bring up a sample project to work on for the permit processing.
Yeah, I think the question was, what do we take to the commission? So, Mr. Potash. muted, Aaron.
Get it?
I had to do that at least once a call. While we wait for Jared to be available, have we thought about having Mark DeBee come and speak to us? I mean, he is the Cal Recycle Permitting Deputy Director. He may have some insight on why or why not the consolidated permitting process has sort of not been utilized.
Yeah, we could ask Mark. We did, again, in preparation for the BIN Summit, had a discussion that included him, and it was blank stares about the process. So I just don't think there's been a project, and there might have been. Mark thought maybe somebody initiated the process and then the project dropped decades ago. So, but we could certainly ask them to, maybe the question is not the experience with the process, but what they think of using the process. Maybe that would be the question, more hypothetical.
Or is it about, having done these, sorry, I was going to say, just when you're initiating these projects, I don't think the project sponsors are even aware of the process. What can we be doing to put that as an available option as somebody's going to, at a local planning department, propose a new solid waste facility or a compost facility, that there's sort of just a pathway right there that the planning department does provide information that you can go this other route.
And just real quickly on, so local agencies are also required to do permit streamlining, but they can't interface their local process with state agencies. The state agencies still act independently. So I think
I'm just saying that they have to give information. They just have to give information to say, by the way, are you aware that there's this other sort of process that you can utilize?
Okay. Yeah, and I'll tell you from the market development perspective, I've been a recycling market development zone administrator since shortly after this legislation was passed. I was not aware of the process, and nor was any other zone administrators that I spoke with. So I think you're right, Mr. Patashner. I think it's a hidden process on the books. Heidi, you had your hand.
Yeah, I can make a proposal in the essence of time here. So I'm just not comfortable moving on this until we get more information. But we are running out of time to get this in the January proposal because we've only got 3 meetings after the commission meeting this Wednesday to finish that report. So I would propose that we reach out, we do an official data request from Cal Recycle to say, you do the, whether it's Mark DeBee or somebody in Cal Recycle or somebody in Cal EPA, please get us information as quickly as you can as to why nothing has happened with consolidated permitting. And at the same time, John and I can reach out to Serena and the folks at GoBiz, do one-on-one calls and brief you at the next committee meeting, or even if we can get the information, we could feed it back to on Wednesday's commission meeting and tell everybody what we learned. And that would help inform us. But I think if we are going to do a proposal that'll get into the January report, we have to have it in front of the commission very quickly because it's got to be read twice. So if that's okay with everybody.
And we don't need to do it today, but I'm looking at item 4, just to undertake pilot projects. So, maybe that's the way we test the water if someone wants to go into that process. But yeah, let's table this, do some more research, and move on. So what's the next step? The next one, the next group has to do with general plan guidelines and trying to raise the awareness of recycling-based manufacturing, organics management, reuse and repair in the general plan guidelines. The only change from our prior recommendation was to require input from local solid waste agencies, including consideration of adopted plans, including countywide integrated waste management plan and capacity planning required by SB 1383. So that's, you know, a pretty detailed recommendation. I think the other language all has to do with specific guidance given by the Office of Planning and Research on general plan development. The number 12 is to assure zoning consistency with general plan guidance for reuse, repair, recycling, and organics management uses. I think this is something that I've heard a couple times in the committee discussions. So that was part of the recommendation. Move forward, and then also to update CEQA guidance to consider positive greenhouse gas impacts from recycling-based manufacturing and organics management. And I've heard of EIRs that only look at the negative impacts of organics projects, that only look at CO2 emissions from operation of equipment, don't look at the methane reduction and avoidance. That's the gist of recommendation number 13. Mr. Medrano, you have your hand up.
So for number 11, the updates to the general plan climate change guidance, does that only apply to that category, or would it apply to all of them from 10 to 13?
Yeah, I mean, they're all similar, but I think the focus through, again, the subcommittee discussions was how do we reach into local land use issues on a statewide perspective. So the economic development general plan chapter seems to be a really good fit for market development. And then there are some climate change advantages. So those were the two chapters that called out. You can scroll up to number 8, Kate. There. Yeah, and then the land use guidelines are the broader ones. So there was a project a while back that addressed organics projects under the land use guidelines, but not these other recycling, manufacture, reuse, repair, and recycling facilities. So if you were to look at the general plan land use guidelines, you'll see organics projects called out in there specifically. I'm sorry, who? And Schneider, I think you have your hand.
On number 13, John, or Commissioner, I agree, and I know that our legal power is to look at greenhouse gases. I wonder if we're going to update or ask to update CEQA guidances, if we also look at other environmental impacts. Let's say we wanted to cite a paper plant in California, and we know that paper plants produce quite a bit of water pollution too. However, if the plant is in California as opposed to Vietnam, we also know that water will get treated properly, or hopefully treated properly, whereas sending it to Vietnam, it won't. And it's probably better to use a plastics manufacturing operation than paper. It would be nice if California truly wants to be responsible for everything we use and produce here, that we keep it here, and that environmental criteria that would be used against reuse or recycled manufacturing is compared to how it would be done if we send it offshore. And that may be too complicated for what we're allowed to do now, but it's really California being responsible for everything we are doing. I just can't get over that picture from burning plastic in Vietnam. If China's helped themselves, but they've simply moved it to Vietnam, and I don't want to be responsible for that anymore. I want us to be better.
No, I think we could address that. So, Kate, why don't you put a bullet number 14, because CEQA does require consideration of project alternatives. And so why don't we say to update CEQA guidelines around project alternatives for, recycling-based manufacturing and organics management to include export of materials outside of California.
Thank you. That might also help with that argument of compost creates VOCs, and they don't regard landfills and what landfills do at all. So it could help on both sides.
Yeah, Mr. Potassium.
Yeah, just to admit on item number 9, I think it was actually SB 876, not 1383, that had the organics capacity planning requirements.
It's in 1383 as well, but let's include SB 876. Yeah. In 1383, it applies to communities that haven't secured organics capacity by the dates. And then they must look at their land use. They must actually review their local land use standards and address any obstacles to permitting facilities within the jurisdiction.
Got it. And it's 876 from 2015.
Thank you.
Great.
15.
15. Okay. Slowly. And then, John, this one, you said I didn't capture the whole thought. So if you wanted to repeat that or fill it in later, let me.
Recycling, manufacturing, and organics management. Including export. And I guess we should say including export and landfilling, right? So yeah, landfilling and export of materials outside of California. There you go. Okay. So are we good with taking this back? I think all we really added from the commission standpoint was number 9. But we've just added a new recommendation. Maybe we'll revisit that question when we get through the next sections. So this is a series of recommendations around GoBiz. There were no changes, I don't think. I'm not sure. Yeah, we actually did not get to a discussion, excuse me, at the commission about these recommendations. Remember Sanborn.
Yeah, I think this follows up on my recommendation from the previous item. I'm just not comfortable putting recommendations about what GoBiz does into a report to the legislature without talking to GoBiz. And I was actually, as I said, on a call with them Friday. I feel like if John and I, maybe a committee of 2, subcommittee of 2, reaches out to them and shares the draft suggestions that we have that might pertain to their work and get some feedback on this consolidated permitting process and all these different suggestions here, I would be a lot more comfortable bringing these back to the commission as final. I'm just not comfortable doing this until we've talked to GoBiz. I think they're very high level. They're appointed by the governor, and we should be very careful about making recommendations about what they do or don't do without talking to them first. So I'm going to reach out with an email if the committee agrees with that. John and I can talk to them and then get back to you. And if we feel it's important, we can just invite them to the next meeting of this group, if that's okay with all of you. Okay. Let's see, 1 thumbs up, 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, so there's no changes to the language, but we'll hold bringing this back to the commission until we've had an opportunity to go over GoBiz. Let's look down. I know committee member Petashner indicated that ARB is going in the process of updating compost emission reduction factors. And in that process, treating methane as a short-lived climate pollutant. So
that is my understanding that they're working on emissions factors for composting.
We didn't discuss much on the carbon farming emission factors. Has that come up? I held a meeting with a potential applicant for a carbon farming project, and it occurred to me that there's no rules, right?
I'm sorry, was that a question for me? My son walked in and I got distracted.
Yeah, I guess number 23. Have you heard about any steps to develop carbon farming emission factors?
At the state level, I have not.
Yeah. So again, I think it's useful to have those for people who want to either voluntarily claim emission reduction from a project or sell credits or even know what they're getting into. The number 21 is actually along the lines of Community Member Snyder's comments earlier. By recycling in California, we have a cleaner energy grid, so the emissions associated with the grid are cleaner. So if you compare recycling paper in Vietnam or Thailand or China to recycling in California today, you'd find a greater reduction of the greenhouse gas emissions associated with that, besides the shipping costs. And somebody has, Ann Schneider, is that you? Raise your hand.
Just on the subject of carbon farming, I am hoping that we're going to implement carbon farming within a suburban environment because we do plow some spur property that we have. So I hadn't thought that we might have to ask for a permit, but we just finally approved our EIR for our CAP, and having data that we can claim will help the city because, you know, occasionally you are plowing or disking under your parks, and all of those are opportunities to do a little carbon farming.
Yeah, the Marin project looked at the impact on grasslands of applying a layer of compost and found additional sequestration in the root structure through the compost emission. It's exponential. So there's really nothing on row crops or trees or other impacts of compost, but on grasslands specifically, which is recommendation number 23, there's pretty good data, and probably can ask to begin to look at emission reduction factors for that aspect for grasslands. So yeah, I've always thought the parks or even, you know, residential lawns are carbon sinks with the additional sequestration.
You know, it goes back to the comment about when staff changes. We had a longtime staff member here who did not believe in mulching. So if you look at public lands within one city, as an example, we rarely mulched, and it drove me insane. That employee is no longer with us, but we still have to bring in a culture of mulching public areas. So that could be a huge market for organics once we really start, as we grow our organics markets. So that I was reading the buy recycled stuff for the state level. The buy recycled and recycled utilization at the local government level has to be included too.
So SB 1383 goes a long way in requiring local agencies to acquire organics materials. It might be renewable gas, but it may well be mulch or compost.
It's a great market opportunity.
Yep. Okay, so I think let's scroll down and what's the next set?
And John, I missed, there is a public comment if you would
yeah, sorry.
No problem.
Please.
It's in regards to the consolidated permitting discussion. This is from Steve Outsey. It is not having read the original legislation. I am wondering what it says about funding for this lead action by one of the designated agencies, and whether an agency might have ducked its implementation because of additional costs to coordinate permitting of a complex project. if the goal is to implement the law via a set number of pilot projects, it might be good to attach the need for funding for any new legislative proposal. If it works well in pilot, expansion because considered. C/B. I don't know how to say that, sorry. Expansion should be considered. Yeah, and that has been published. And again, that was from Steve Otzi.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I don't think funding was addressed in the legislation. I don't recall seeing.
And let me go down. Sorry about that. There you go.
We moved all the SABRAC recommendations except for number 23. So that was pulled. I think the committee or the commission is prepared to adopt the other recommendations that we sent forward. But this compilation of life cycle analyses was pulled. And I guess I looked at the Oregon, the recommendations from the task force in Oregon, and they have kind of a similar recommendation about compiling life cycle analyses, but it's broader. Ours was focused really on the SABRAC program, and I think, and I'm pretty certain that LCAs are one of the devices that an applicant could submit. If you recall, SABRAC doesn't require verification of recycled content claims, and one of our recommendations was that they do that. But so life cycle analyses might be submitted as verification if we want to modify it. I think this was really to begin to have a way to view the life cycle analyses that companies put forward as claims. If Oregon does it anyway, we can always review them on the Oregon side. What are your thoughts about number 23? Do we want to revise it or leave it alone? Take it back? Let it linger? Mr. Medrano?
Based on some of the comments we got at the general meeting, it looked like it was something that was not preferred because of the what the LCAs, the validity and how long they take to produce, and then who's producing them. So I don't know, just bring it up as discussion to the group. Maybe we might want to explore this a little longer and just take it off this first recommendation.
Member Sanborn.
Yeah, I'm looking at the recommended concept for modernizing Oregon's recycling system. And one of the things we discussed at the commission meeting was that they have preliminary consensus agreements that they're going to create a material-specific LCA database to support the decisions for end-of-life management and design for the environment. So one of the discussions we had is, why do we want to duplicate efforts with what Oregon's probably going to do? I think it's more of a coordination thing. And for the reasons that were raised at the commission level, I suspect we are not going to get consensus that this should be done because there's too many variables. Who's paying for the LCA? You know, who's designing the study, which determines quite a bit of the outcome. And so does who's paying for it sometimes. And holding things up because that information isn't available or readily available. But I totally support, maybe we could do something like, we could change this instead of compiling it, say coordinate with the state of Oregon and other states that might be compiling LCA data and try to make the data as readily available as possible in California for good decision making, or something along those lines might be easier for people to agree with and approve.
Any other thoughts? Yeah, again, I think the intent was not to require it, not to use it in making purchasing decisions, but when they are available to compile them and share them, which is pretty much what Oregon's doing. So the people in Oregon, have been using LCAs for a while. I trust their stewardship of the concept. So I'm fine having read their report and recommendation, I'm fine with not duplicating it. But maybe you raised the question whether if I'm not sure whether they're going to analyze the LCAs or just compile them. And it sounds like they're simply going to build a library of life cycle analyses. And the concerns I heard at the commission was that, life cycle analyses can be misused as marketing tools, which is true. And at the same time, it's information that could be useful. So,
also, again, I would recommend we just change the language. Maybe, John, you and I can work on how to wordsmith this, but change it to be something along the lines of coordinating with our, fellow states on the development of a material-specific LCA database, or just encourage CalRecycle to work, coordinate with the other states like Oregon, who have recommendations to create a material-specific database to support the decisions for end-of-life management and material design.
Yeah, I'd be interested in critiquing the LCAs, but and again, I'm not sure if that's what Oregon's going to be doing. Committee Member Medrano.
I also would like to see these available for the public to see. Is that something the rest of the group would be interested in?
Yeah, I would think they'd be a public document, but we need to know more. Is the Oregon project going to be discussed at the commission? We know.
Yes, in fact, we've invited David Alloway, and he is coming to present December 2nd. So
okay.
Maybe we hold off on this one, or we have a private conversation with David about what they are doing, or because again, these are the preliminary recommendations; they're not final yet.
Yeah, If we could find out what they're thinking in more detail, then maybe we could bring something forward by that time.
And I don't think it's as urgent as the other recommendations we've already got in the report. I think this is the one that we could probably take more time with and coordinate with Oregon and other states for the July report.
Okay. So I think that's it for the narrative. Are we okay going back on the OPR general plan guidance and the ARB emission reduction factors, and bringing those back to the full commission? We never really got we had a discussion of the OPR recommendations. I'm not sure we got far enough on these. But if we're okay, we'll just revisit those at the commission meeting on Wednesday and get feedback from the commission. Committee Member Sanborn.
All right, I guess I'll kind of be singing the song for a while. Is if we're going to make recommendations for entire state agencies to do things, I really think we need to talk to them and let them see our preliminary recommendations and make sure we understand everything before we finalize them and put them in a report to the legislature and Cal EPA.
Do we want to get the commission's feedback as we did on the earlier recommendations, and then solicit comments?
Well, my preference is that I think the committees are where the commissioners think the work is done. So if the work is including getting ARB's feedback on our preliminary thoughts prior to submitting to the commission for approval, then I would suggest we hold this until we've talked to them about this and make sure we understand their side of it before we put it to the commission.
Okay. Well, Medrano?
Yeah, I don't know if Commissioner Potashio had a chance to listen into the last 10 seconds of this discussion, but I would support having the full commission give us their feedback on this. But then on whether the ARB is actually going through some of these efforts, and Commissioner Potashio brought this up to us, it sounds like you're intimately aware of what's going on, right?
Just on the emission factor for compost operations. I know that is underway between ARB and Cal Recycle in terms of a new study for statewide emissions. That's the only thing I'm aware of.
So,
Sarah, Toyota.
Okay.
It seems like, time is of the essence, of course. And so if ARB is starting to do some of these things already, then it's kind of a waste of time to take them to the full commission and have them talk about it if it's going to happen anyway. So maybe it is good if we just hear from ARB first, find out where they stand on all of these, and again, do that work here and support that, and then take it to the commission later.
Heidi Sandler.
Yeah, I mean, if we can do that and actually, because it could be a paragraph in the report that says, we've talked to ARB, they're doing, this compost emission reduction factor, they're in process, and we support them finishing it by X date, or, be supportive of the stuff that they're doing that we like or feel needs to be done. But not just throw it out there as though we didn't know that it's already happening or in process, or, that. So I agree.
All right, so we're going to talk to ARB. I assume we're going to be talking to OPR, Office of Planning and Research.
Who's in charge of that?
It's one of the governor's functions.
Oh no, I meant who at this committee would be reaching out. Is that for you, John, or do you need help? I know there's a lot piling on. That's why I'm asking. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any contacts there, but I'm happy to make some phone calls if that will help. I know you two already have a list from today's meeting, so I can do
Why
it.
don't Sarah? Let's you and I can remember Toyota and I, so I can share what I have from the ILG project, and then anybody want to talk to their resources board? I actually talked with them a while back around a couple of these issues, so I can follow up with their resources board. It's okay if you want to put those in the notes here.
Yeah, thanks, John. Perfect. So to be clear, so you will reach out to our resources board, but Commissioner Toyota is reaching out to OPR. You're a subcommittee maybe, and you'll both work on that.
Yeah, I'll take the lead on ARB with Cal Recycle maybe if there's a good contact there, and really? Then on the OPR stuff, let Sarah Toyota and I work together. Too.
Cool.
On that.
Great. Thank you.
All right. So let's look at the kind of ongoing recommendations where we stopped. We had worked through this set of recommendations in narrative. But we have, there we go. Yeah, so you can flip down now through just a reminder about how we had laid it out, and Kate went in and grayed out the recommendations that we had actually worked through to send forward to the commission by motion at our last meeting. So the non-grayed out parts start really on goal number 3 of the market development plan, which is to promote efficient local waste diversion systems yielding high quality industrial usable feedstocks. And we had a series of initial recommendations around carpet, with an addition from our previous discussion, the red language about requiring Cal Recycle to pre-improve in writing studies to be conducted with public fee money, and ensure those studies remain public and transparent to Cal Recycle and the public, provided in a timely fashion. I think this arose out of some concerns of studies that ended up getting caught up in questions around PFAS and microplastics. The other bulleted items are, I think, was that the only one, Kate? If you want to scroll down. Yeah, and so we also had a collect carpet at no cost, including hard to handle reimbursement. Cost of handling the carpet is covered by the stewardship program, either by reimbursement or that the program pays for handling, as currently done in rural counties. I think we need some wordsmithing on that one. But the idea would be right now carpet. If it comes, say, to a transfer station, the transfer station can charge a fee for the carpet at the gate, and then CARE, if they're part of the CARE process, CARE will provide the transport off the site, but the cost of getting the carpet into the container is borne by the facility. I think the corollary program, mattress recycling, pays a handling fee for each mattress that comes in, and it's that fee goes to the operator of the facility, and then the mattress program hauls materials off. So there's a difference between the mattress program and the carpet program in the cost of handling. So I think this language, as I said, it needs some improvement. I'm not sure we need the reference to rural counties, but I think the idea is that there be a handling fee paid for the carpet. And I think if we were going to put these in kind of a descending order, the banning carpet from landfills probably should fall after the idea, as I recall, was to try to get more carpet handled through the money directed to handling it, and then if at some point consider banning from landfill disposal. So that we have a plan, right? Member Sanborn.
Sorry, I totally agree, and I think that we need to be very clear on the order and what needs to happen before the ban is imposed. But it has to be a lot more convenient for installers and the public to recycle carpet. The folks have to be getting properly compensated to do the work of the program, and they're not now. So there's like a series of things, and maybe you and I can actually write up and give it context and then put in order to these, and maybe a timeline, a recommended timeline.
Yeah. So let's say ban carpet from landfill when there is a plan, when there is an effective plan.
But I'd like to give that a timeline and not just leave it hanging out there 10 years from now.
Yeah.
You know, like maybe 5 years or 4 years, or after, the first 2 years, these things happen, and then, the landfill ban would be imposed.
So, Committee Member Schneider, and then I have a thought I want to share.
Just in keeping with the legislation that says 75% of the population, would we want to make sure that there's markets that achieve recycling in 75% of the area of California?
Well, yeah, and that's, it's been one of the collection goals for the program, is to have locations in every county, which in rural counties, that kind of worked out. You might have one transfer station serving a small rural county. It becomes more of an issue in urban areas where you have a lot greater density, and one location in LA County has a much different impact than one location in Nevada County. So I think the convenience, there was a study a while back that CARE did on convenient collection, and I think it's that convenience that maybe you're addressing. what we know is that a lot of the materials come from the installers. That's really going to be the source of it. Materials at a landfill or a transfer station that's already dirtier than it was when it got collected. But I think it's the installers or maybe what we're missing here. I don't call. If you scroll up, okay, this one seems to jump pages. Do we address installers? We don't. So I think that's going to be the opportunity, is to try to more effectively collect material from installers. And I did reach out to CARE's executive director. We had a discussion about that, and he indicated that they're, it's the flooring installers. It's not just carpet installers anymore. So the LVT, the other flooring materials are going in, but people are tearing out carpet as a part of that. So that's so let's put a bullet in here as we work on this to address flooring installers, including carpet and other materials.
Okay. Can I just put that at the end for now, or is that fine?
Yeah. We'll slot it in. So it sounds like committee member Sanborn and I would rework this language and maybe bring it to the commission. And I think once we get that, it sounded like from earlier comments that we definitely want to solicit input from both CARE and the Carpet Stewardship Committee. Do we do that before going to the commission? We're back in this loop of writing comments, but trying to get input. So.
Weren't we waiting for a report from CARE that's going to come out before we finalize these recommendations? Somehow I remember that.
That had to do with, I'm sorry.
They had a report due actually November 1st that was apparently deferred by Cal Recycle, and I'm actually curious as to why. There was something to the effect of COVID, but it was about how they were going to implement their eco-modulated fees and some other things. But I still think it's the work of the committees is to do the detail, do the research, and bring a really kind of finished recommendation, as finished as we're comfortable getting it, to the commission, which is going to get very impacted with all the recommendations coming from all the 4 committees for the next 4 meetings. So that would be my recommendation, is we keep it here, hold it, get everybody's input, and maybe John and I, we finish the proposed language, we talk to CARE and the advisory committee, a couple of the people like Gail, and then we can bring it back to this committee at the next meeting and have CARE and the advisory committee members be available to take questions from us and present information they want us to know before we finalize it for the commission's adoption.
Yeah, just a thought on the advisory committee is also a Bagley-Keene committee. It's a Cal Recycle appointed committee subject to Bagley-Keene. So I'm not sure that going to the advisory committee is going to work within our timeline. But we do have comments from a number of people who are members of that committee. So I guess I'm thinking that we reach out to the people who've commented on this topic and get their input specifically. Anybody can still comment, obviously, but we do have on the record comments from other people, and most of it has to do with collection. So, Kate, do you have a public comment?
Yeah, and it ties perfectly into this. This is from Gail Bryce, XT Green. Could the recommendations for carpet be tabled until the committee gets input from CARE and the advisory committee? And that's been published.
Yeah.
Actually, on Heidi's. Oh, sorry. I was just looking at the carpet website when you said that, and on the Cal Recycle, it's calrecycle.ca.gov/carpet, and their first bullet under program news says, on October 6, 2020, Cal Recycle approved CARE's request to extend deadlines for 10 projects or deliverables due to factors explained in CARE's request letter, including impacts caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. And there's 2 links in that. So it has the request letter and Cal Recycle's response. So just FYI.
When are they due, Kate? Does it say?
Let's see. I'm opening it right now. I believe 31.
Sorry, I couldn't hear it. What of 31?
Oh, sorry, June 30th.
Oh my gosh. All the way to mid-year next year?
I can share this letter. It's publicly available.
That's a long time. I didn't know they got that over a 6-month delay, because that puts us at a disadvantage, because then we don't know what they're recommending literally the day before our report is due.
Is this the differential fee? Is that what the report is? Yeah.
Well, it's more than that, but that's part of it.
This is the letter.
Oh, it's convenient collection. I saw flashed on.
And then here's it looks like items and the revised due dates. Apologies if it's hard to read.
Yeah, so that's a really big problem for us, because that means they're not going to even come up with their plan until our report is due to the legislature.
No, we can still make recommendations.
Yeah.
I will go back.
Okay, so let's, it sounds like Committee Member Sanborn and I are going to rework these and try to solicit some input prior. Ann Schneider.
Hi, thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at things that are more on the EPR, more like a take-back program on there, and thinking of the labeling committee. So with your permission, I'll reach out to the chair of that committee. I'm the vice chair of that committee, and say that we probably need to add to our work plan the EPR component of Cal Recycle's messaging on this. I think whether we wait for the report or not, having the installers take things back is the logical pathway for it. I got a number of requests from my residents over the weekend of what to do with mattresses. So I was on the mattress site and looking at everything they're doing, and maybe there can be a single message that helps our public understand that closed loop on there. So if it's okay with you guys, I'll bring it back to the labeling and messaging committee. Because we haven't talked about that at all. We've only really been talking about curbside containers.
Yeah, we haven't. Okay, well, so let's try to put the carpet recommendations in a form for review by CARE and by the committee. But obviously, we're not going to have the benefit of these reports, and so. We can still let them have the benefit of our suggestions. The next group, I think, go ahead.
Sorry, Chair Davis. Just to clarify for notes, Commissioner Snyder is going to bring the EPR components conversation of fluorine to labeling in media. Is that the right way to capture that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And then if you want to add on carpet that Heidi Sanborn and I will work up some.
Got it. Yeah.
More fully fledged.
Yeah, and we're going to reach out to the advisory committee and the CARE for feedback.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Manuel Medrano.
So that means that the carpet recommendations will not make it to this Wednesday's presentation.
Correct.
Sounds like it. On the next one, the LVT flooring, I think is, probably part of that carpet recommendation, the broader recommendation. But it's also part of the big topic that we haven't addressed yet, which is the EPR. So, you know, it's not just LVT flooring, there's other flooring that is going in. Carpet's being removed, and that carpet doesn't have any financial support embedded in it. So, something to discuss. Dimensional lumber, drywall, asphalt shingles. I know Sarah Toyota's done some research, and I've done some research since our last meeting. We are going to have a discussion around CalGreen, but maybe Committee Member Toyota, do you want to summarize what you've been looking at?
Well, it's kind of hard to take them individually without looking at the whole picture, because a lot of the issues with recycling and reuse of these materials are contamination and things like that, which have a detrimental effect on the markets. And I do want to remind you that I did speak with a couple people who do the LVT flooring, and there is a minimum content possibility for those. But collection is an issue with that, the cost of collecting it and bringing it back to the manufacturers and the places where they're actually going to reuse that into the new LVT. So the two issues with that are the cost of collection, because it's voluntary right now, and they try to keep the cost neutral. So if it costs too much to collect it, then there does have to be a charge for it. And the other one, of course, are the toxins and contamination that are in some LVT. And the Armstrong flooring folks that I talked to said they'll even take competitors' LVT or vinyl flooring because they can use that much of it, but it has to be clean. There's a lot of cost in testing it and making sure that there's nothing in it that will cause a problem later. Dimensional lumber and asphalt shingles. Well, asphalt shingles first, because mostly everyone that I talk to about that will talk about Caltrans can reuse it. There's a market for it, but Caltrans doesn't. And I've heard a couple reasons why, but ultimately we're going to have to go back to Caltrans for the same reasons we're going to have to go back to everything else. One of the things about this commission that I definitely learned is that what we really don't have are these other state agencies represented at all. And so when we're going to talk about, you know, we can't tell Caltrans to do a pilot project without understanding why they're not still using asphalt shingles, because apparently they used to. That could be a good market for them. But again, we're going to have to reach out to them. So that'll be my next step there. Dimensional lumber has a couple outlets, some biomass, mulch, things like that. But the only things about those, again, is contamination. So when you look at C&D kind of all together, there's a couple things that came across to all the people that I spoke with. And one, I think I said this last time across the board, was that you have to make sure that they, everything is certified, that whatever is going to happen with these C&D materials actually happens. So there should be a certification program for minimum, for reuse, for recycling, for everything. And then the other thing is contamination. And I guess there's some laws I understand from some of the folks who do this, that in Canada they ask the drywall to be taken out first, because when that crumbles down, it pretty much contaminates everything else. And I was speaking, what's his name, with James Slatery. He does full-time C&D construction and demolition recovery specialist for City and County of San Francisco. And he was kind of saying how, you know, the folks that are supposed to reuse it don't really have any say in how it's put together. So when you reuse it, there needs to be no toxins, contaminations, and so forth. And yet if they're using a lot of toxic glue and so forth in the actual building, then that's a problem. But there's no, you know, where they have to reuse it, they can't specify how it gets done. So it's kind of like going back to the packaging or the building to be reused and recycled, that's another issue there. Having that connection between what you need at the end, having basically the whole circular economy mindset when you're building things, or packaging for recycling. It's a lot of the same issues that are that I feel like that have the same kind of connections to what's going on with curbside recycling. How do you package it so at the end it's usable to the folks who want to use it? And I also understood from these guys that they do, that more than anything, they really don't want to take it to the, pay the prices to take it to be landfilled. So they would really like to have these opportunities and programs. So they're supportive of them, but it's mainly undermined by the fact that there's a lot of people who will say, yeah, I'll use it for this, pull it away, send it to the landfill, and then basically don't dispose of it the way they're supposed to. So there's a couple things. First of all, of course, is the certification program. And then the other thing is that I think an interesting thought that I heard too was that not having the 65% goal for recycling, for C&D recycling, that maybe a different look should be from having 100% of what can be recycled, reused, and so forth happen. Make the goal that, and then look into what more you can do with the materials that that are basically going to the landfill after that.
Okay. So
that was kind of broad, I know.
Yeah, no, I appreciate Sarah diving into this. Kay, we have a public comment, and then I wanted to mention my conversation about drywall.
Yes, this is going back briefly to carpet. This is from Gail Bryce XT Green. If there isn't time for formal AC review, I can distribute the draft recommendations to the members with a reminder/request for them to submit comments as individuals representing their companies/organizations. And that's it. That's been published.
Great idea.
So on drywall, I did follow up. So I was following up on Michael Gross's proposal about drywall. Sarah Toyota looked into the asphalt shingle, although I talked briefly with Michael about asphalt shingles as well. But drywall, I had a lengthy discussion with kind of an expert in the field, and apparently drywall is banned pretty much from landfill disposal in the Northwest because of off-gassing, sulfur dioxide. So there's some really exemplary programs in Washington State and I think in British Columbia, but Washington State specifically, CertainTeed has a really high percentage of recycled content in drywall, and so I have some literature about that. There are a couple of drywall manufacturers in the Bay Area who apparently have expressed a willingness to incorporating drywall into their products, but you get into a kind of a closed loop issue about there's slight variations in the composition of the virgin drywall. So using recycled drywall, some manufacturers want to use their own material. Not clear that that's really necessary. I think what we end up with is both a collection issue and then a really, in a broad sense, an extended producer responsibility issue. If a drywall manufacturer can take back drywall, why shouldn't they be incorporating drywall in as recycled content? And I think the issues that I heard about collecting clean material, there's a difference between the construction project and the demolition project. So if you're going in building new, somebody comes in, hangs the drywall, and they move on to another job. But what they're doing is hanging drywall, and they're doing that all day, all week. And so they're handling drywall, and the cuts, the scraps are there, and they're clean. And so you don't have that contamination issue of pulling them out of a mixed load that occurs on demolition sites. So I think as we go forward, we need to be cognizant of that difference on construction and demolition. What I heard, at least on drywall, is that there's plenty of material on new construction that the installers, again, are the source. So it's kind of similar to carpet. The guys who handle most of the material that's what they do, and they're the source of material going forward. If their only option is to send it off to a landfill, it's one thing. If they got a bin at a construction site that they can dump into, that's something different. But if how do we incentivize the manufacturers? And so that's, I think, extended producer responsibility kind of a question, and we're fortunate to have a committee member who has quite a bit of knowledge about that. Ann Snyder, you've got your hand up. So.
Just a question. You already got the difference between construction and demolition, but oh golly, thought just went out of my head. The DIYers versus the professionals. And I'm curious, for a while, can clean construction grade drywall enter into the composting field, composting material? Just things to think about.
I think Mr. Patashner's probably got some comments on this.
Sorry, well, can you say that one more time?
About drywall, using drywall in composting as a soil amendment additive.
Gypsum sometimes will be added as an amendment that we will purchase from folks that have been recycling drywall, but you don't just throw the whole thing in there.
I just would keep in mind the difference.
Specific use. Right. It's really to break up hard pan soils and.
Yeah, and gypsum is not just it's not a universal additive. You have certain types of agriculture uses will ask for it as part of a mixture. So
the messaging to a DIYer at home then, as opposed to a commercial application, would be how to message that so then it doesn't end up in the composting bin. It's going to end up in garbage. Having been a DIYer, and I've hung drywall in about half my house here, so all those little remnants drove me crazy. What to do with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think at that scale it becomes a lot harder. You might be able to take it somewhere, but who's going to? I think our focus is really on from a market development standpoint. It's going to be driven by the scale collection, and the installers.
Yeah.
So we are going to have a discussion with CalGreen. Maybe one of the questions for CalGreen is what are the opportunities for requiring recycled content, whether it's for engineered wood products, for drywall, asphalt shingles, and roadway mix. So Kate, if you want to, I know we've reached out to CalRecycle around that, and maybe that's a new set of questions that we want to pose. Have they looked at minimum content opportunities for construction material? And if so,
opportunities. Okay, minimum content opportunities. Okay, got it.
John,
Ann Snyder.
I'm sorry. I live in an almost 100-year house, and for the last 15 years, I have been upgrading it from removing knob and tube wiring to panel upgrades to removing T-box paneling. And my frustration, knowing what a contractor should do, and then me at the end of the day going through whichever, my electrician, my whomever, and separating stuff out. I think if we really want it, and remodeling is big, it's still a big component of the waste stream. We need language to go to local governments that said contractors operating in your community need to do X, Y, Z. It would make life a whole lot easier. If I can't get my electrician to pull out the copper wire and put it in one place instead of in a garbage can full of lunch materials, then no one's going to be able to get it done. And it was frustrating. Even when I sat down and chose whomever I was choosing, I said, look, I'm a recycler. I want this to happen. And it still doesn't happen. So if something we can do in market development also sends the message to local governments that contractors must do X, Y, Z on that, that's what would, I think, make life a whole lot easier.
Why don't we put a placeholder in on deconstruction and
remodeling contractors.
Demolition, yeah, remodeling, demolition, and recycling.
I will tell you, everybody will say, oh, yeah, when you get their bids. And then when it comes to reality, they don't. And they don't have a 40-yarder or a 3-yarder out in front of the house. They do have a pickup truck. That's what happens in a small remodeling job.
Okay, well, let's put a placeholder in and have that.
Thank you.
We can at least find out how Cal Green addresses that, which is the statewide D&D requirements.
I think all the cities that have deconstruction, I'm sorry, I think the cities that have deconstruction permits, they trigger it a certain square footage remodeling job, or they trigger a certain value of the job, like it's got to be a $50,000 value. But if you can bring your bathroom in at $30,000, you fall underneath. Like for me, I couldn't afford to do the whole house at one time, so it's been room by room. So none of those tools that are in place helped me.
Yeah. So let's discuss that on the Cal Green topic and find out what those thresholds are. I think they are set in Cal Green. Okay, let's go down because we're not going to dive into these till our next meeting, I guess. We have propane cylinders as a placeholder. I think Committee Member Sanborn, you had asked that we include that. And what were your thoughts from?
The thoughts, the comment came from the National Stewardship Action Council, and it was about, let me see, I don't see it on the screen right now. You on there? Oh, I see. Propane cylinders. It just says propane cylinders, but it doesn't say what section it's under. So,
you know, I think the insect comments, if I recall now, it was kind of a question: who handles, what committee is going to address hazardous material?
That's right. And Ted and I were working on that for the report to bring back to the commission this week to kind of suggest where it gets slotted. And then we can just
Sanborn. Oh, sorry. Chair Davis, your phone, we don't hear you anymore. Your phone dropped off. So you can continue. He can hear us, but we can't hear you, Chair Davis, if you want to call back in.
So the suggestion was that I'm looking for my comment letter right now because I've got a pile of them. But the suggestion was to take them up, and the HHW is a bigger issue of where does that go in the entire report. So Commissioner Ward and I were figuring that out and are bringing back a proposal for Wednesday as far as where it goes in the report. But then really the suggestion is, I believe this committee is the right committee to handle the cylinders for this reason. We have a company that sells refillables based in California. We've done multiple, I think probably 12 to 15 HHW grants that focused on these cylinders. So there's been lots of California and CalRecycle investment in building the infrastructure to sell and refill them. And so now we have hundreds of locations at U-Hauls all across the state that sell and refill these cylinders. It's an incredibly wasteful product. It's a huge GHG product. It's literally a hot rolled steel cylinder for a 1 pounder that holds a quarter's worth of gas. It's about the most inefficient, GHG intensive package there is for one use. And that doesn't make any sense at all. And they're a huge problem for the waste haulers because they're showing up in the trash and the recycling bins and causing fires. We've had fires and entire explosions at MRFs in Michigan and other places make industry news. So to me, this is a safety issue. It's a GHG issue. It's a refilling, reuse issue. It's a market development issue. But if we request that the state phase in a ban and just say, by 2 years from now, they can't sell single use anymore. We've had refillables for 5 pounders, the 5 gallon for a barbecue forever. Why aren't we doing this for the 1 pounders when there's a safe alternative out there now? So I would love for this committee, I think is the right place for it, is developing that market and banning the sale. And I'm not a big fan of sales bans at all, but I think on this particular product, it's necessary to move the needle.
I'm going to step in here as vice chair until John can come back. I see Commissioner Medrano next, and then we'll come back and address Heidi's concerns. Commissioner Medrano.
Yeah, so, I wanted to maybe propose that the propane cylinders be wrapped into the HHW proposal. I guess we'll wait on Wednesday to hear it, but it could be used as an example of how programs like these work, and then take on. I do agree that it should be something that this committee should look at, but wrapped into the whole HHW conversation.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanborn. First and foremost, local government's #1 job is the protection of its citizens or its residents. So I hear what you're saying. I would be, with my city government hat on, saying that anything that is a danger should move to the top of our work. I think you're being kind in giving them 2 more years. I'm happy to support that. I think we also need to make sure that the message goes that this is very dangerous. And collecting garbage and recycling is a dangerous field, and we need to make it safe. Staff, did we also have a public comment? I saw a name flash or a phone number flash on the top.
I believe that's Chair Davis. I can see his mic is on, but I can't see.
I'm back on.
Okay, Chair Davis is back. Back in your hands, John. Just language.
Well, did I miss anything?
Well, so where we are, I think where we are is we're going to refer to so Ted and I are going to propose Wednesday where the HHW section goes, and that this roll into the overall recommendation, because the 1 pound propane cylinders were literally part of the proposal from NSAC on their comments, along with the EPR HHW framework. And those 2 things go together, because it could be that the propane cylinders come under the EPR framework for the first tier of products, except it's not just producer responsibility, it's going to be a disposal ban or a sales ban on the. So I think it's a great idea, Commissioner Medrano, and so we'll get that up.
Commissioner Sanborn might be frozen. No, she moved,
Okay.
but her voice was cutting out.
I thought maybe it was me again.
We can't hear you, Heidi. It cut out right when you. We heard most of it. Can't hear you now, huh?
Yeah, you're on.
I'm good with it.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we know. We're gonna learn more on Wednesday. So the glass issues. One of the I received a comment that there is minimum content requirement for glass manufactured in California, but not for glass sold in California. And I have not looked up that provision in the statute, but the source is a pretty reliable source. So that was the reason for the first bullet, was to require minimum glass content for glass sold in California. So I will, if anybody has any knowledge about that requirement, let me know. If not, I'll try to find it in the Public Resource Code. Ann Schneider.
When you talk about glass, are we talking only about bottle glass here, or insulation?
Yeah, bottle glass.
Okay.
Bottle
Do
glass.
we have minimum requirement for insulation, for fiberglass insulation?
I don't know. I believe so. It may be under the same provision.
It is.
So it's manufactured and not sold.
And then do we completely ignore window glass having to have any recycled content in it?
So
I live in the land where you need really special glass to help block out airport noise. So I understand the complications, but I would love to see window glass be part of this too.
Heidi Sanborn.
Yeah, there's different types of glasses, and so one of the things that's interesting is the carpet industry and Tandis Flooring has actually been recycling auto window glass, which is a very different type of glass doesn't shatter, and the use of the backing of their carpeting. So there are specialized glass types that can be recycled, and I think that's a deeper dive, but I think again in the overall scheme of things, we at the core, and this is maybe something for the commission to discuss as part of the very beginning of the report. In our world, if we're going to a circular economy and zero waste, everything has to be designed with the end of life in mind. The end. That's it. Because if they're putting stuff on the market that's very specialized for all these different purposes, that's great. But we have to have something to do with it. And that has to be thought of at the very beginning of the design phase. And we have to know it's coming at the back end so we can figure out what to do with it. Maybe that's the context for the entire report.
So one of the RMDZ projects that I worked on is a company called Sharp Glass, and they are windshield recyclers, and they do remove that laminate barrier on windshields. And so one of the advantages that they have is that they work with the installers of windshields. So it's it's the auto parts stores, windshield installers are the source of their material. Again, it goes back to, I guess, how do you get clean material? But they do remove that laminate barrier. So if we want to talk at some point about that, I can certainly arrange for a presentation. But it was really, I think, a technology finding a solution rather than a design issue. Nobody thought that we'll design the windshields with this material so that it can be easily recycled. It was actually very difficult to do. So, Ann Schneider.
I know this is going to sound really silly, but I would love to see all of the industry that is reusing or recycling something be listed as essential businesses. We've learned the term essential through COVID, and all of these businesses are essential. We recognize it collectively for the garbage collection, compost, and recycling, but I'm not sure we see it in terms of the manufacturers or remanufacturers on that. So somewhere in the report, if we, maybe that's something for labeling too. This is an essential business. We need them in the United States. We don't need them offshore. And I have toured a recycling factory. All my insulation is Pink Panther because I've been to that factory and seen the bottle glass go into it. But I don't know if they're still there in Santa Clara. I wish our public knew how many manufacturers we did have, and we celebrate them. I sound like a politician now, don't I?
Well, so the minimum content requirement, I think, let me do a little dive and see what's probably in the Public Resources Code, and then let's come back with that one. But it certainly makes sense if we're only focused on materials manufactured in the state. We've seen it now with plastic beverage containers. It's going to apply to what's sold and not just what's manufactured. So that seems logical. There's a question about CRV on refillables. I think the recycling committee is looking into that. We've had a couple of comments addressed here about refillables as a market development aspect. I don't know the answer on whether there's CRV. And I certainly, the idea of refillables are great. There was actually a report on glass recycling that I looked at recently, and refillables was one of the, the industry market development approaches. So I'll try to bring that one up. Standardization for reuse. Does anybody recall how that got on here?
That's from me, Commissioner Davis. And I think Heidi also brought it up because up in Canada, they standardized, or I believe they've still standardized beer bottles, which made beer bottles be reusable across more manufacturers. in our wine industry about 15, 20 years ago, they really went into diversifying their bottle types, which makes them more specific to a particular winery. I think they've done the same thing by labeling, because they're all grabbing that market. They're trying to grab that point of sale visibility on there. But part of reuse is to try to standardize bottles.
So who's going to tackle these bullets? I'll look at the first one, but does anybody want to volunteer on?
I can do some, in one more day, I can breathe again, and then I'll start looking into standardizing for bottles for reuse. I think we're going to get a great deal of pushback from our wine industry because they've really gone to specialization, but let's see what happens.
And do we address refillables, or are we looking to the recycling committee? Do we know? Because we need to find out.
My understanding,
it's a recycling issue.
Yeah.
Sorry, it is a recycling. It was referred to the recycling committee.
Yeah, they're looking at the refillables are okay. Okay.
Heidi, are they also then looking at the commingled rate? Because I'm trying to remember, I'm rusty on this. With the commingled rate, that was sort of the last nail in reusable bottles, because it was just cheaper to throw the wine bottles in with the commingled bottles.
I believe they have
looked at that. Okay.
Well, let's see what
I believe they have, and Eric, I believe, sits on the recycling committees. Maybe more detail. I try to watch.
I'm on organic.
I don't hear every word of it. So.
No, I'm not on the recycling committee.
It has been an agenda item discussed. I believe Chair Don Levy is interested in that, and will be on future agendas. I know that's been raised a few times.
Yeah, I think their priority has been to fix the curbside program as best they can right now and increase, dealing with the bottle bill immediate problems. So again, getting into reusables is definitely a longer term fix. So they're probably not prioritizing it, but I know they've discussed it.
Okay. And Kate, if you want to put my name after the first bullet on minimum content, I'll do that.
Public comments now? I guess there's 5.
Yeah, we do. We have public comments.
Yeah, let me.
I was looking at the last bullet here, and I think that probably falls under the same as the first one. So I'll take that.
Okay. Actually, might have a few. I'm going to start at, who did I leave off at? Apologies. This is from Steve Lautsy. And this is in regards to number 4, which we see on our screen. So he's ahead of the game. Regarding competitive versus efficient collection, it's been suggested that competitive collection references the 1990s flow control controversy and may be obsolete. I would suggest that this part of the statute could be adapted to emphasize reduced contamination of recycled feedstocks, which would be better for manufacturers and market development. Okay. And then we have a comment from Gail Bryce on construction and demolition waste. Agree that there's a real problem when it comes to contamination at demolition sites. Too often, carpet is used as a drop cloth, contaminated with other material, and removed last. It would be very helpful if in demo jobs, they would be required to remove carpet first. This could be very helpful, especially as California infrastructure for recycling commercial carpet is coming online in 2021. Now a comment from Howard Levinson. Number 1, modulated fees, or RE modulated fees, see page 11 in the Future of Electronic Waste Management California report. Under number 4, provide incentives for repair and reuse. This mentions the concept. I believe background research on this was shared in workshops as part of the project. You could contact the manager of CalRecycle's CEW program for more information. Number 2, consolidated permitting. I am positive that Cal EPA has a few consolidated permitting pilot projects, had a few consolidated permitting pilot projects in the 2010s, perhaps around 2015, but I'm not sure. I searched the Cal EPA website, but can't find anything on these projects. I personally don't think consolidated permitting should get this priority, but certainly am not opposed to it. But I think there are more important issues, including Clean Air Act barriers and sustainable funding for infrastructure development, especially for organics incentive payments. And number 3, these are all from Howard, sorry, one comment. So his third point, general plan guidelines. FYI that Kara Morgan and I worked with OPR several years ago to modify the guidelines and incorporate much of what is now in there about recycling. You might want to contact her to get more information on that interaction. And number 4, go biz. Many of the recommendations are already being done, but it might help to have them strengthened in statute. Okay. Then we have a comment from Doug Kobold on propane cylinders. CPSC, as the creator and administrator of the Refuel Your Fun campaign, would be happy to participate in the discussion of the single-use 1-pound propane cylinders and how to move forward. We now have over 20 HD grants related to single-use cylinders and reusables. CPSC is working on several solutions to this problem and would be able to provide valuable feedback to the committee on this topic. Another comment from Howard Levinson. Is this? I think actually that's the thing. I think it's just a repeat. So never mind. And then Peter Mew on recycled glass and solar panels. Commissioner Sanborn's and others, I guess, comments on recycling glass. Solar panels also have to be redesigned to allow for effective demanufacturing at eventual end of life. Can this commission recommend an initiative for a California designed solar panel that is optimized for reuse and recycling? And that is all the comments.
All right. So I think thanks Howard for the clarifications. I was part of the project that led to the OPR revisions. So as Saratoga and I talk about it, we'll go back and look at what was changed and then try to bring that back to you. I think it would be interesting if there were projects that went into the consolidated permitting. I remind the committee that one reason we took that up was we were hearing about issues around permitting and the lack of coordination between agencies. And I think what Howard Levinson raised has to do with federal language that give really the authority to local AQMVs around pollutants, criteria pollutants. That's my guess. So we'll, once I get a copy of that report, we can take a look at it and see what he's raising. But again, the permit coordination issues, I think, is what we were hearing, and that's why we address those. So. Steve Loutsey brought up the next item, and then we do need to go back. We need to go backtrack at one point here. So, Ann Schneider, you've got it.
On competitive collection, I'm not sure we're out of it right now. We have materials with negative value. We're really only looking at the residential waste stream, but the commercial waste stream periodically goes to negative and positive values, which still get in the way of local franchise fee contracts, or franchise hauler contracts. So I hear what he's saying. It hasn't been something talked about a lot, but coming from the commercial recycling side, this was a big fight for us. So it may just be a placeholder for now, but we're in the land of negative value.
Yeah. Why don't you scroll down, Kate? And let's look at, there we go. I think the language that we're recommending is that the term is ambiguous, the competitive collection. This section, the whole market development goals were written at a time when there was no Carbone decision, there was no Rancho Mirage decision. I think it raised its concern. It certainly does with at least one commissioner from the hauling side. And so the suggestion is we look at efficient collection. I think the same issues can be raised there. You bring up one about negative value materials, and I've always contended that a negative value is still a value, and I think the issue around value is one thing. The issue around paying for service, complicates it. I'm not sure that we need to go there. We need to try to get material as best we can, but the efficient collection, is a big part of it. We have a lot of negative value material, and the collection issues around construction site recycling are kind of notorious all around the state. Who is a construction cleanup subcontractor a legitimate construction contractor, or are they avoiding the franchise that would limit the collection to the franchise hauler? But I think competitive collection, I think that was kind of the red flag language. So to focus on efficient collection is the recommendation.
Can efficient also be misused the way life cycle analysis is used? Because if you have a negative value material, but it's highly polluting or highly takes a lot of energy to produce a new material, aluminum, steel, that's why I would hate for us to lose negative value materials, because there's so many other attributes that those negative value materials carry with them that may not be evaluated when you're looking at what's efficient.
I
know we've complicated it, but it's back to Heidi's comment of, if we're going to go into a closed loop or a full circle economy, throwing any kind of aluminum away, given where bauxite comes from, is bad. Any steel thrown away or put in a landfill because it doesn't work in a curbside collection, MRF, is bad.
Yeah, there's an analytical distinction between efficient and effective, and usually effective considers the cost consequences, the fiscal effects. So in one sense, efficient means you're getting it from point A to B. If it's a collection, it's being delivered where we want it to go efficiently. Cost effective is a whole nother range. Whether the efficient collection is the most cost-effective collection. If you took all carpet, took it to a transfer station, dropped it on the ground at the transfer station and moved it, that might be more cost-effective than having the installers deliver it back to their location, or maybe vice versa. Mm-hmm. But are we trying to understand the cost-effectiveness or the efficiency? So I think, to me, it's what I hear a lot around the EPR discussions. How much do we delve into the management of the program as opposed to getting the outcomes that we want? And if the outcomes are there, I would say that's kind of where I'm thinking efficiency lies, in getting those outcomes. Whether they're the most cost-effective outcomes or not, it's kind of like reading LCAs. I guess it's all in the eye of the
It's all in the questions that you ask, yes.
Yeah.
Or the area that you study. And I'm trying to think, if this were a mass balance, I think for me, this is more the metals. Anything in the metal category, I hate how much of it we're still landfilling.
Yeah. Well, I think, the idea here on 4 was to begin to queue up maybe kind of a framework on extended producer responsibility. We brought up, we could bring up issues on almost every material where the manufacturer's giving us something that's difficult to handle at the end of life. But how does it fit in that framework structure? So. And we're going to be due for a break momentarily, but do we want to do that now, or do we want to introduce the discussion around EPR at this point? I also noted, Kate, and I didn't notice it earlier, we did not finish the Coward Cycle recommendations. So there's a whole slew of Coward Cycle recommendations that got captured in the gray area. And we really should go back and take a look.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
So we're gonna need to back up and do that as well.
Okay. Would you like me to read a public comment associated with this item?
Yeah,
right
please.
now?
Yeah, please.
Okay. This is from Steve Lutzy on this competitive efficient collection. To clarify my point about competitive/efficient collection and the mission of this committee and commission, I'm saying that recs to the legislature for collection might emphasize quality and reduce contamination of collected materials. Also dovetails with recycling committee mission. Mixed collection may be least attractive for market development. That has been published.
Okay. Trying to think here. Well, let's, Committee Member Sanborn, do you want to, we've listed EPR here and have some bullets. How do you think we should be addressing that from a market development perspective? Okay, maybe you want to scroll down and make sure we have all the bullets up.
Well, first of all, EPR does not necessarily mean an advanced disposal fee, so that's not actually accurate. So we need to, because obviously the preference of the National Stewardship Action Council is that it be an internalized cost of doing business, and there's a lot of reasons for that I can get into. But basically, it's public money handing over to a private sector industry organization if it's a visible fee. And there's been a myriad of problems related with that model, particularly with what has happened with carpet that we had to fix with multiple cleanup bills. I don't know if on the market development side, we should be tackling EPR as a single focused market development issue. To me, it's number one, it's a funding issue for programs to sustainably fund them. Under that is market development. Under that is product design. Under that is convenient collection and all of that. So I think, we said from the beginning, we didn't have a specific committee addressing EPR as a policy approach. And I think that's the right thing. I think we should not, EPR could be applied to different product types. And then the details of what's in that section could be discussed. But I think if you'd like, I could work with Ted, who's also quite well versed on EPR. And since we're already a committee and already working on the report, is just develop a section on EPR is what this commission believes are the priorities for a good EPR program if that's chosen and recommended for a certain product or category. That could be a discussion item later. I suspect it's probably, we're not going to have time to get through that by January 1st. We might have some general comments that producers should be responsible for financing and for running and all of that under parameters. And we could even say, one of our parameters is if they fail to achieve a certain goal by a certain date, that the state can take over the program to make sure that it works for the people of California. Or that there's it's opened up to competition to other stewardship organizations to compete against the one that hasn't met the goals. That way we have healthy competition. And in other countries, they've actually mandated competition and seen the prices of the stewardship programs plummet precipitously when they do have competing electronics programs in the same space. It does complicate things to some degree, but those are some choices. And we could talk about this all day, as you know. So I just think I'm not sure this is the right place for this. So maybe, John, we look at this more in depth and think about, is this a market development discussion for the report, or is it more of a full commission discussion? And should that come from this committee or others based on the
it's on here because it came up from the initial brainstorming that we did. And then I think the subcommittees that from this committee tried to throw some ideas out around the topic. So I might suggest that Committee Member Medrano and you maybe have a discussion around that market development focus. You know, that might be helpful from the committee discussion. And then you're right, you know, the commission still needs to grapple with the bigger picture, but there are certainly some market development aspects to a well-run program. So, or we wouldn't be talking about carpet, for example. So.
Yep, be happy to. Then Will and I can work on that.
Okay. So, Kate, why don't you throw that on? If you could flip back up, Kate, I think it's up. It's way up toward the top. The Cower cycle language. And we're not. We'll come back to it today if we have time. But there you go. So there's a whole set of recommendations. A group of them about really specific to the RMDZ program. But if you scroll down, we don't need to go through trying to remember what else is in here. Yeah, okay. Keep going. Yeah, so there's some RMDZ language and then some broader language around market development and kind of the institutional view of within Cower cycle. So, you know, we haven't gone back over these. I've heard clearly that as we make recommendations around state agencies, we should be talking with those agencies about the recommendations. I'm going to assume from that we want to have that discussion with Cower cycle as well. So I would suggest that the two zone administrators here on the committee, Mr. Medrano and I, maybe go through that with Matt Hennigan and his staff and bring these back to you. Okay. Is there more beyond that last bullet, Kate? Let me just make sure I've covered everything. Yeah, okay. So these are really market development RMDZ focused. Heidi Sandler.
Yeah, Kate, if you go up a little bit, I think it said something about a tipping fee.
Yeah.
These are, I mean, I want to be super careful what we're officially recommending and what comes out of this committee to get to the commission. Developing a per ton fee on landfills to use for RMDZ is a very big deal. Like, that's a huge deal. I have not seen anything except holy wars over increasing tipping fees for anything. And to me, these each have a big deep dive sort of conversation we should have.
Yeah, and just to be clear, it's not for RMDZ, it's for recycling market development. I think the difference.
Right, but if I'd like to discuss this very deeply, if this is the kind of recommendation we're making, because this could be picked up by a legislator. They could end up in a massive fight they didn't plan on. And I'm not sure the benefit to that fight if we're getting the needs of the businesses met through permit streamlining and through enhancements to the state agency by recycle campaign to create market pull and all these other things. I guess I just want to be really careful. This is our very best thinking about what we need.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure it is right now.
Mr. Patapsky.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Heidi. I mean, this is a concept that was in the CalRecycle document for organics on 1383 is something that could fund infrastructure, which is not too far of a step forward on this market development side. I agree with you. It's a very tough fight, but it's also how other jurisdictions deal with moving away from disposal, higher landfill taxes. I think it's worth consideration.
Yeah, and the other corollary was the greenhouse gas reduction funds that have been used for organics and recycling infrastructure. Really, that's the food fight in the legislature every year. CalRecycle's programs were left out even in the preliminary recommendations, let alone the shrinking pot. So I think it's it's certainly worth discussing. It's been an idea that's come forward through a number of times over a number of years. So, but Heidi, you had your hand up. Sorry.
Yeah, just to respond to that, thanks, Eric, for that background. I'm thinking, because this is such a big deal, that maybe this goes on the next agenda for us to have a really deep conversation about it. Because to me, why is it $1 and only $40 million? And is it only focused on organics? Because organics is our biggest problem right now, is getting the infrastructure for that. If that's the case, we need a lot more than 40 million. And is that the right amount? $1? How was that picked? I mean, I just
that was just a multiple. There's about 40 million tons going in landfill. If it was $3, it'd be 120 million. So it's really was just a multiple. How much would be available for every dollar? It'd be $1.50, $3.23, whatever.
Right, but I just don't want to throw mud at the wall. I feel like if we're going to come up with a number, we need to be able to justify it and defend it. And I just think it needs a deep discussion.
Yeah. One of and I'm thinking because, we have a commissioner who's held these discussions and been a part of these discussions, and maybe we can invite Commissioner Lapis to, if we're going to have a discussion around this. I think he's as well versed or more than anybody about the impacts of that, let alone the 2/3 vote. Okay. Well, yeah. So that one clearly, I don't think CalRecycle, maybe they have taken position on it. But, Kate, you have a public comment, and then we'll take a break.
Yes, I have a public comment from Doug Kobold with the California Product Stewardship Council. Advanced disposal fees or advanced recycling fees are primarily product stewardship, typically funded by visible consumer fees with little to no financial impact on the producers/manufacturers. The paint, carpet, and mattresses programs are an example of this. For true EPR, the manufacturers will be on the hook for the costs of the program and should be required to reward both manufacturing in-state and use of recycled materials, while penalizing those who use virgin materials and manufacture their products out of state. That has been published.
Yeah, I think the fees came up at a commission meeting during a presentation from the recycling committee. So that's one reason they ended up in here, but maybe we'll learn more what their thinking is. So, but let's take our break. We don't have much time left for the meeting, but I wanted to get through these sections. So let's take, what are we scheduled for, 5? Yeah, well, let's take a 5-minute break, and I'm sorry, 10-minute break. That's what we're scheduled for. Yep. Looking at the wrong.
It was a 5-minute break. Do you want to just do 11:30?
Yeah, 5-minute break. Yeah, I'm sorry. I looked at the notes from the last minute. The 5 minutes became 10. So let's take a 5-minute break and try to finish up. Be back at 11:28. All right. Well, appears we have regained a quorum. So I wanted to just clarify a couple of things for our next meeting. But oops, lost my.
So Did you still want this up, Chair? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so the next item is discussion and response to previous public comments. And I think, Kate, you compiled the comments. Are those, I don't remember if those have been posted.
They haven't been posted. I just sent you a Word doc pulling from meeting notes.
Okay.
If you want me to pull that document up, you have to give me a second because I'm working on it. Actually, would you, I've
got it. It's in the Google Drive, I think.
Okay.
I put it in the Google Drive. So if the committee members, when you get a chance, look at the Google Drive and the previous comments, I think we have like 14 pages of comments. A lot of them, I believe, we've addressed, but there may be some out there that we haven't. And so it would be helpful to me if you go through them and think there are some that merit additional consideration. We really want to try to respond to all the comments we've received. So we are trying to compile them, and we've received quite a few today, so that'll be added. So we're going to end up probably around 16 pages of comments at the end of today. I retrieved one comment that went to the commission in its first meeting from Mike Tenney because it related to carpet. So that was included in there. So, just trying not to miss things that we need to consider and be in a position to respond to. Did we list anything here, Kate, for today specifically? I don't recall.
No, there were just two public comments made during the item, but no, nothing we singled out to review.
Yeah, so this was the previous public comment section, you know, as I said, we've received quite a few, but I think we've responded to a number of them. But maybe let's move down to the next couple of items. We did have some data requests, I believe, from our last call, last meeting.
There was a request for a CalGreen presentation, which they're preparing to give for next meeting. I will reiterate some of the new questions raised in this meeting to the appropriate folks. Then there was Chair Sanborn's request for more clarification on SABRAC, and unfortunately Zoe couldn't come to this meeting today, or Matt Hennigan, so we're prepared to respond to that question on the Wednesday commission meeting. Sorry about that, but someone's happy to jump on and respond to that question because they couldn't be here today. That was category question.
That had to do with CalRecycle's ability to make administrative changes to certain things that appear to be recommendations. So, Sanborn.
Yeah, and I think those were the two requests, specific requests.
Thank you. And I think today we had also then that CalRecycle give us an update on the consolidated permitting process and what's happened and it looks like Howard had sent us comments that something had been happening, or maybe there was some pilots that had been done with the air board back in the day. So I'd love to, and I think we talked about that, John, having that on the, and then also the general plan guidelines. Howard mentioned in his comments that maybe there had been some work on that too with Kara. So maybe we should get an update on that.
Yeah, I'll follow up with that. I was part of that project, as I mentioned, and so I've seen, I think, an edited section that had the changes as a result of the project. But I'll follow up with Kara.
Those are the two I had from today.
Yeah.
Okay, Chair. Yeah, we can. I'll chat with you, Chair Davis, because if you're going to follow up with Kara, but if there's anything you'd like me to reach out to specific other people on consolidated permitting or pulling that information, but yeah, Kara Morgan has a lot of that, so we'll see.
Okay.
We can chat.
Yeah, and I think in preparation then for our next meeting, we are going to have. I think we're looking at quite a few either presentations or discussions in the interim, and then reports back from the committee members. The one presentation that I know is coming up is on the CalGreen, on construction, demolition, recycling. We talked about getting carpet viewpoints, and how do we want to do that? We're asking for CARE to give us some feedback in writing. We're asking for the carpet committee members who've commented previously to give us feedback. Do we want them? Do we want it in writing, or do we want them at a committee member? Sanborn.
I was suggesting that you and I finalize and tighten up that section of very draft proposals, and send it to both the advisory committee and to CARE, and ask them to please, and Gail can send it out to all the individual members and they can respond as individuals. So at least we know where the members of that advisory committee are, and then also CARE from CARE. And then based on that, but I still think it'd be a good idea to invite them both to the next meeting to review their responses, and to just have a discussion with them about where the program is, especially now that their big changes aren't due until June 30th of next year. And we have draft and final report due basically before that. So
we would do Cal Green, we would do CARE.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about having a discussion around the landfill tipping fee increase for market development. So the next question from the agenda standpoint is how much time for those discussions. We've gone through the comments. You know, I don't think we have to turn pages again on until we resolve things on the comments. So the work should really be done to try to hone in on what we have in the draft recommendations. And so that gives us time. Do we want to have a half hour for each of those topics so that we can have some meaningful discussion, not rush through a 20-minute time frame? So
I think both of them need at least half an hour.
Yeah, so if we do 3 topics with a half hour, okay. All right, at the end of this meeting, we always set the agenda for the next meeting, Kate, and I get right on it because it takes time to go through the review process. So we'll be setting that agenda today to begin to circulate it through Cycle tomorrow. Anything else that you recall from today that you really want to prioritize next time? I think if we could have 3 discussions around those topics, we've made some pretty good progress. There's a lot undone on the C&D on construction materials. So got a lot of dive to do.
John, did we want to, after the carpet one, have a discussion about flooring as a whole, and if we want to make any recommendation on whether all flooring be brought into the discussion, not just fix the existing program for carpet, but deal with all flooring as a category?
It was part of comments that we received from members of the committee. And yeah. I know from my experience that it's been brought up from time to time, but not much the committee can do around that. So I think maybe we could incorporate that as a discussion point in the items to be sent to the carpet committee and to CARE and get their view of it.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Okay.
And I can work on that.
Yeah. I think, the broader topic about how to structure programs, the EPR framework, I think we leave that alone. But, what do they think it should be included or not? Okay. Lot to do between now and the next meeting, but we don't need to stay on. We can finish this one early, and I'm sure people have things to do. All right. Any last comments? So thank you. We will try to start getting some feedback as best we can, but there may be a time when we just have to make our own best guess. Mr. Potashian.
Yeah, just real quick, at the full commission, we talked about the letter that came from the plastics manufacturers and producers. And there was a discussion about inviting them to make some sort of presentation. Is this the right committee for that presentation to happen, or do you think it's more on the recycling side or full commission? And maybe that's more for Heidi.
Yeah, I can give you an update on that. We basically talked with Recycle. The suggestion was limiting the comments at this next meeting to like 3 minutes, and it just doesn't make sense. So I talked to Tim Shestek, and we thought, again, this is a big discussion. This is going to take at least an hour of the full commission, probably, and not a committee, because it crosses over recycling and contamination of organics and markets and everything. So we decided that it would be, first of all, we're waiting to see Recycle's response letter to that letter, because Richard and I have had one ready to go, but we were waiting to see Recycle's response, and we still don't have it. And I don't know why that's taking so long. So I'll definitely ask Zoe Wednesday for that letter. And then we'll respond to them. And my suggestion would be that we're literally going to be running out of time, and the commission has to decide what to prioritize to put in front of the commission, because recommendations are coming from the committees now, and we only have 4 meetings left to get anything we want at the beginning of the legislative session to them by the end of December. So we're literally like 6 weeks away from having the final draft report done. That's how fast it's coming. So the commission, after CalRecycle presents to us what conversion technology is, what is chemical recycling, or what do they understand it to be, et cetera, we are going to discuss Wednesday what to do with that the comments and where to put them on our agenda, whether it's full commission or committee.
Okay.
So that'll be the discussion we have on Wednesday for sure. And I'm still waiting again for the CalRecycle response to their letter, because they had one. I thought it was going out last week, so.
Okay.
It hasn't been forgotten by any means.
I have oh, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
I have a last maybe last from Gail Bryce on draft carpet. Well, okay. Would the invitation to the next meeting be to the carpet advisory committee or to individual members?
I think because of Bagley-Keene and because it's a large committee, I think our what I understand is that we're going to reach out to the people who've submitted comments about carpet, ask them to respond in writing to our whatever we wrap up in the next day or two, and then ask the people who respond to that to be available for discussion with the committee. It's that last part I'm still a little vague about. I know we want written response, but who do we want to talk with in 2 weeks? Heidi?
I'd like to at least give the advisory committee the opportunity to respond as a whole if they can. I don't know if they can do it fast enough, but I'd like to at least allow them as a committee to try. So if they can't, then individuals can send us comments, but we definitely want their input.
Okay. Yeah, and again, because they have Bagley-Keene limitations, I think I'm anticipating it might be difficult for them to respond collectively within that 2-week window. So then what do we want to do? Do we want to get written? The individuals can submit written comments to us. Do we want to have someone appear in 2 weeks?
I guess the question will be for that group to decide whether the members could reply as the committee or as individuals. So right. We still.
Okay. I'll reach out to the chair of the committee and then we'll see what we can get.
It doesn't have to be our last conversation about it either. I mean, if they can't turn the comments around, we could still theoretically do on November 30th another advisory committee presentation on the issue, still get our comments over to the commission for the first meeting in December, and then second reading and approval December, second commission meeting of December, and still get in that first report.
Okay. All right. Well, let me coordinate it with the chair of the committee. It sounds like the preference would be that we get the committee comments, and we already have individual comments, including people who are on the committee. It sounds like our desire would be then to get the committee comments and then a discussion about those comments. We may be able to have CARES comments for our next meeting, independent of that committee. How do you want to handle that? You want to have CARE without having the committee comments if the committee can't respond in 2 weeks? Okay. Yeah, so they're independent of each other anyway. So, okay. All right, I will reach out on those. All right, if there's nothing else, 13 minutes early. Everybody just gained 13 minutes and an hour, right? So.
And remember to vote.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Yeah.
Thank you. Well done.
Bye, everyone.
Aye.